right, maybe you can finish your last thoughts, sentences. All right, let's talk about it. Just maybe out of curiosity before we start talking about it, raise your hand if you resonate with Martha. Okay, okay. Raise your hand if you resonate with Mary. Lazy. Lazy. Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That is the opposite of what I'm talking about today. But yeah, what'd you guys think? Oh,
Hi,
nice.
Front and Center. Um, so we were talking about how, like, Martha was doing a lot of things for the Lord, and how, like, that was how she shows her love for the Lord. Like, she was doing all these things,
Hmm.
and how Mary was not doing that. And maybe it's trying to show us that what God really wants is for us to, like, just sit at His feet and, like, be close to Him
Hmm.
instead of trying to, like, do all these outward displays of love. Maybe
Yeah.
just being with Him. So.
Yeah, that reminds me of like early on in our marriage. I thought I was doing all these things that was really loving to Sherry, but she didn't like feel loved at all. Like she was just like, I don't care about I don't care about these things. It's kind of like that, you know, like maybe she is doing her best to love Jesus well, but maybe she doesn't really know what it means to love and be loved by Jesus in this moment, you know. Yeah, it's great. Who else?
At our table, there was a little resentment because it was like if Martha, right? Yeah, if Martha doesn't do anything, who's gonna do it?
That's true. That's a very good question.
But then
Yep.
also the thought that it's not that what she's doing is wrong or bad; it's that there's like the better or best thing, and if we can focus on Jesus in the midst of whatever it is that we're doing, maybe that's better.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's like I don't it doesn't feel like Jesus is ungrateful for what she's doing for him. But it's also out of his love for her cuz you know, his thing is kind of eternal. He's like there's the one thing like are you talking about right now? There's only one thing that's needed cuz we need to eat, or are you talking about there's one thing that's needed in our lives? And it's Jesus is weird. He just does like why are you talking about my whole life right now? When we're just trying to have some food, you know? So I get it, yeah, 100%. Yeah,
As I read it, the question of love languages popped in my head because for one sister, it looks like her love language is acts of service. The other sister looks like it's quality time. Both are valuable, just presented differently.
yeah, I guess that's interesting too. Like how good or how well is our acts of service received by people who don't really feel like they're known by us? You know, like there is something about us knowing who they are. And you know, like one of the things that I actually, no offense to anybody, I really don't like it when people tell me I did great job in leading worship this morning. It's just I just like there's just something about it that makes me feel really uncomfortable and really weird. But if someone tells me like a very specific thing of like, hey, I saw that you've been working on this thing for like a month. You're doing a great job at it. It just hits different, you know, because they had spent time around me enough to know where I have been trying to grow, where I've been trying to, not that I'm not trying to grow in worship leading, but yeah, there's just something about being seen and then being served. So all the love languages in some way is actually like serving, you know, in my head. And to do that out of a place of knowing the person, I think is important. Yeah.
Yeah, Cece and I were talking about Well, I made the comment that I think is really interesting when people sort of try to triangulate Jesus into their conflicts. So, like, I have an issue with you, but I'm like, Jesus, can you, like, say something to this person because I'm so mad at this person? But I guess that kind of sparked the question to me of, like, why does she ask Jesus? Like, is it that she's triangulating? Is it that she's wondering if he's actually offended or if he actually cares? Like, why get Jesus involved in this matter when it's between you and this other person? Like, why involve Jesus?
Yeah.
I don't know if you have an answer, but it just occurred to me as we were looking at it this morning.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that too. And I think part of it is like, I feel like I've experienced things like that where I'm kind of upset at somebody and I'm like looking around. Anybody else? Like, anybody else feel the same way, or is it just me? And I don't know, maybe, I've never met Martha, but partially what I imagine if I kind of step into her shoes, how I would feel is just like wanting someone on my side. That maybe like an affirmation that what I do think is wrong and right is actually wrong and right and wrong, you know? So I don't know, but that's how I was seeing it. Got John.
Well, something that just came to me as we're having this discussion is it also brings up, I think, sometimes we have to be careful about needing ministry more than ministry needs us, in terms of wanting to be validated
Yes.
in what it is we're doing.
Yes.
As you were just talking, it kind of came to me like, that's true. How often do we want to just be validated in our service to Christ? Almost like maybe she feels like, okay, Mary's getting all this attention from Jesus, but hey, Jesus,
Yeah.
I'm the one that invited you,
Yeah.
Look what it is I'm attempting to do for you.
Yeah. That's really good. I think it's convicting for me as well. Just the idea of like, we think, for me, a lot of times although I understand theologically that grace is how I'm saved and grace is like kind of a core component of our faith, I'm still trying to earn his validation and earn his love. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but yeah. Maybe one more, two more, one more?
As I was sharing here with the table, it reminded me of two words God had given me earlier in the year. One was intentionality, and the second thing he mentioned to me just a few months ago is do it the way I say do it. And those two things, as we were talking around the room, the word that it kind of brought it to me, those two things were the word balance. And he was talking about the balance where she was so busy doing things, and this one, she was like, she's not doing anything. They're both doing important things, but I think there's a time when we have to find that balance, and that's going to come into the being intentional of like, okay, God, I'm busy. This is what I normally do, but I need to check in with him on a regular basis and say, that might be my regular routine, but what is it that you want me to do today? And it may be rest, instead of doing all the things. So that's what came to mind.
That's really good. The word distracted literally means, in this context, pulled away, dragged around. So it's not just busyness, but something about what she's trying to engage in is mentally and spiritually fragmented. She's being pulled, it's pulling her away. So it's not bad to serve others. It's not bad to do good things. And, a lot of times we read this passage and sometimes they like to bifurcate, the two. Being is better than doing. And doing is always bad or something, but that's not the case, right? It is when the doing pulls us away from the thing that is most important, which is Jesus, Yeah, that's great. Is that it? Oh yeah, she sat down. Okay, great. All right, well let me jump in. I think when I ask that question of who resonates with Martha, who resonates with Mary, in our context and in our culture, I think a lot of people would actually raise their hand for Martha, especially like where we're at, where we're situated. Martha, I don't think, is simply upset that Mary is not helping her. It's not merely a personal offense that she feels, but Martha, without her even knowing, is shaped by her cultural context. She's upset because Mary isn't doing what is culturally required of her to do, to host, to make food. I mean, that in that time, women were the ones to do all those things. And so she's kind of like, why aren't you're not doing not only what I'm telling you to do, you're not doing what the world is requiring us to do. It's kind of like when people come into our house. I never know how to go about doing this, but when people come into our house with their shoes on, I'm like, why am I taking my shoes off in my house to try and keep it clean, but then you come into my house and step all over the place? What's the point of me taking my shoes off then? You know what I mean? It's a culture, it's a deeply cultural thing for me. And so I'm looking around and being like, anybody else? Anybody? And I never say anything. I'm always kind of like waiting for someone else to notice and then ask, like, oh, should we take our shoes off? And I'm like, if you want, But deep inside, I'm like, come on, dude. I look like this. What do you think? It's fine. It's fine. She has values to serve that's implemented into her by the context, to prepare, to be hospitable. But Mary sits at Jesus' feet, which, by the way, is a rabbinic idiom for discipleship. So in Acts 22, in verse 3, it says that Paul was brought up at the feet of Gamaliel. So it's this, actually, we're kind of seeing a discipleship moment here. And Jesus, in the most loving way, recalibrates her to what is not only better, but the one necessary thing, which is to sit in the presence of God himself and to be with him. And really, this scene is an illustration of spiritual formation. Because spiritual formation doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? So there's really two parts of spiritual formation. Number one is recognizing how our world has already been shaping us. So we're not blank slates. We're being shaped, we're being formed. The media, all the noise in the world shapes who we are. And so in that sense, we are actually very liturgical beings, because liturgies aren't just religious. We have habits, we do things over and over again that shape how we think, how we live, how we move our bodies or think about our bodies, all of it. Noticing that, and then number two, implementing counter-formative practices that lead to spiritual reformation or counter-formation. That's discipleship. So there's a whole array of spiritual disciplines and values. We all do like our basic discipleship plan. But how do you actually come up with the things on your basic discipleship plan? You look at the context and the culture of where you're at and actually think about, okay, obviously there's primary values and primary things that we need to understand or we need to transfer onto the people we're discipling. But also, where are they being formed by the world the most? That's pulling them away from Jesus. And actually, maybe we should start there. And so this morning, I want to explore 3 ways the world is shaping us to be distracted from God, pulled away from God. And how prayer is the counterformative discipline that shapes us into a faithful people. The first is that our world, so what I'll do is how our world shapes us and how prayer counterforms us against that, okay? The world shapes us to become strangers to ourselves. For those of you who don't know, a bunch of students, half of them are Jeremy's and Jessica's kids, but a handful of other non-Stevens kids are going to start living together with them in their house, and one of them is already in there, and she's kind of like, she doesn't have a car, and she's, taking the bus to get around places. And they live on Nebraska, and so she goes to the bus stops on Nebraska. And she's like 5'2", petite girl, waiting for the bus on Nebraska with her headphones in, super safe. And this guy comes up to her and asks her a question, and she's kind of like a little worried. He's got like his Air Forces on, he's like cool dude, and she's kind of assuming like, he's gonna ask me for my number, and feeling a little uncomfortable, trying to avoid the situation. And he comes up to her, And he's like, hey, you want something good? That's all he says. You want something good? And she's kind of like, no, thank you, because there's a lot of good things that can be bad. You know what I mean? Especially on Nebraska. What are we talking about here? that's not, you know. And so she's like, oh, no, thank you. And he keeps on trying to talk to her, keeps on like bothering her, whispering to her, whatever. And he looks a little confused as well, which makes her a little confused as well. And so she takes her headphones off, all to find out that actually what he did say was not, hey, you want something good, but hey, are you on summer break? This is a normal dude, normal conversation. Well, I mean, he did go into talk about how he just got out of jail that day. Was in jail for 3 years. He has a thing where he synthesizes mushrooms. I don't know what that means. And and at the end, he actually did ask her for her number, and her for networking purposes, asked her for a number. So you try to give Nebraska a benefit of the doubt, but I share that story because we live in a world, right, where at the click of a button, we can distract ourselves with music, shows, podcasts, and audiobooks. Literally, a universe of things to distract us, right in our, on your tables, in your pocket, in your purse, whatever it is. And the people of our world are increasingly becoming addicted to any sort of stimuli, and they treat silence like a disease to be avoided. There's an article in 2014 where they did this study, or they looked at 11 different studies where they put a bunch of college students in this room individually. So a student will come, they put them in a room, they can't have their phone, they basically can't have any sort of stimulus, and they're just supposed to sit there for just 6 to 15 minutes. That's it, 6 to 15 minutes. And in one of the studies, they have them go in there, and they have this little button that's connected to them. And all you gotta do, if you're too bored, if you can't just withstand the silence and your own thoughts, all you gotta do is press it and you'll shock yourself. Would you believe that 67% of men and 25% of women chose to shock themselves in the width of 6 to 15 minutes, guys? They couldn't sit 6 to 15 minutes. Even though they had said earlier that they'd pay money to avoid being shocked. Liars. They don't know themselves. The fact is, we live in a context and a culture where it's shaping us so much. The digitized, industrialized world, it's shaping us so much that we rather feel pain than sit with our own thoughts. One of the dudes, by the way, shocked himself like 100 and something times. So, masochist or something, I don't know. But I ran into this quote earlier this week by Soren Kierkegaard. And he once said that the result of busyness is that an individual is very seldom permitted to form a heart. The result of busyness is that an individual is very seldom permitted to form a heart. We live in a time where there is more discourse on identity, on personal identity, while at the same time, more confusion about who we are than ever before. There's all these words and all these labels that we can ascribe to ourselves. But when we actually sit down in a room with our own thoughts, we are very confused. It unsettles us. I remember, for those of you who know who Antoinette is, she's one of our friends that when I was a freshman in college. I think she was like a junior or something, I don't remember. But the first time I met her, I walked into this Bible study, I think, and she was there, and she just walks up to me, as she does, for those of you who know her, and she's just like, so who are you? I'm like, I was just so caught off guard that the first thing I said was like, I'm Korean. That's the first thing I said. I'm Korean, and then I kind of started going, I like food, I like sports, I like basketball, and she was so astounded because of the fact that I never said my name. I never said, I'm Sam, and just ended there, which is actually primarily what most people would say. They would say, hey, I'm Sam. And so this actually, I was like, this is interesting. I'm going to start using this. So, and this is not something I made up, but apparently it's actually out in the world where if you're, icebreaker, if you're gathering with somebody, or if you just want to meet someone and ask about their story. One of the things you can ask is, tell me who you are without saying your name, your job, your roles, like spouse, parent, leader, not your relationships, like I'm a friend of blank, or I'm a friend of blank, and not your achievements. If I were to ask you guys to do that, would it be easy for you to do? Maybe for some of you guys, it might be very easy for you to do. Others, I think actually most of the people, especially younger people, really struggle. I've seen it. They don't know what to say. You'd be surprised by how often people don't seem to know how to answer that simple question, who are you? And it's the thing that's closest to us. Myself is closest to me, but I don't know who I am. And this is a very big problem, because it is in the space of knowing who we are, honestly, like fully knowing who we are, that we get to encounter and experience Jesus' mercy and grace. If you don't ever look inside, you don't ever get to experience what his love is hitting in you. You know what I mean? So prayer, I think, shapes us to become acquainted with who we really are. That's the counterformative byproduct of us being a prayer people, a prayerful people. So 1 Kings 19, verse 11 to 13. Is it up there? Yeah, okay. Elijah is fleeing, this is the context. Elijah is fleeing from Jezebel. He's fearful, exhausted, feeling isolated, believing he's the only faithful person left in Israel, and he's like super depressed. He's suicidal. This is the context of this. And it says, the Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Then a voice said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? There's a couple of things that I think I saw in this passage. The first is that God actually, a lot of times, has a preference to reveal himself not in loud or dramatic spectacles, but in moments of quiet and stillness. But that's odd because he's God. Like, if I was God, every time I say something, thunderbolt, 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 literally every time, I'm like, yeah, I'm God, you know? He's not like that. And for me, I was like, why? Why are you not like, why are you whispering? And part of it is, I think he wants us to lean in. There's something about us setting time apart, us putting, a block in our calendars just for him. And I think he's a person. We like that when people do that for us. So of course he likes that. And the second part is that he asks Elijah what he's doing there. Obviously he knows what he's doing there. And so why does he ask him why he's there? I think it's the same reason he asks Adam and Eve, where are you? Even though he knows where they are. It's not that God does not know, it's that he wants us to know as well. He wants us to look inward and face who we are. He wants us to be honest with ourselves. And when we are honest with ourselves, that makes way for something. But of course, we avoid that because when we sit with ourselves long enough, the darkness of our hearts is illuminated into our minds. This is kind of a long quote. I'll read it real quick, all right? It's by Henry Nouwen, In the Way of the Heart. I think she'll put it up for you as well. In solitude, I get rid of my scaffolding. No friends to talk with, no telephone calls to make, no meetings to attend, music, books, just me, naked and vulnerable, weak, sinful, deprived, broken, nothing. And it is this nothingness that I have to face in my solitude, a nothingness so dreadful that everything in me wants to run to my friends, work, distractions, so that I can forget my nothingness and make myself believe that I am worth something. But that's not all. As soon as I decide to stay in my solitude, confusing ideas, images, fantasies, and associations jump about in my mind like monkeys in a banana tree. Anger and greed begin to show their ugly faces, and I give long, hostile speeches to my enemies and dream lustful dreams in which I am wealthy, influential, and very attractive, or poor, ugly, and in need of immediate consolation. Thus I try again to run from the dark abyss of my nothingness and restore my false self in all its vainglory. And then he says the wisdom of the desert is that the confrontation with our own frightening nothingness forces us to surrender ourselves totally and unconditionally to the Lord Jesus Christ. I mean, we're willing to hurt ourselves rather than be honest with ourselves, because we're scared that what will meet us on the other end is not love, but condemnation. But that's the thing about prayer, isn't it? That's the thing why we need to pray. Because at the other end of that journey of going in, like, I don't know if it's him, someone else, like, descending your mind into your heart. That's what someone called it. That you kind of live in here for a little bit in solitude and in silence, and it's really hard. But at the other end, you're transformed. For Henry Nouwen, solitude is not a place you go to find rest. It's not a place where you go to just like, recharge and then go back out there. No, for him, actually, solitude was the hardest place and the best place, because that's where spiritual transformation actually happened. We are put into our hearts in our solitude, in our prayer lives, a love that forms and shapes into us, a heart that can't be pulled away from Jesus and can't be fractured by the ways and pulls of the world. That's the first counterformative reason we should pray. We should be a praying people. The second is that our world shapes us to objectify others. It's a fancy word, reify, but in the book Modern Romance, this is just one example. There's a bunch of dating apps in the world right now, right? And what they have found, actually, that cause in our social psyche is, number one, because there's an overabundant menu, we become picky based on superficial categories. So anytime we see somebody there, just looking for the better one constantly. And we consumerize humans through a market mentality that says, if this one doesn't work out, I can just upgrade. Now, I'm not saying it's inherently terrible and bad. I mean, maybe you can use it in a good way. I don't know. I've shifted in how I feel about dating apps. But I'm talking generally about how it's forming our world, forming all of us, non-Christians, Christians, all of us. And this is what George Lukács called reification, a process where a relation between people takes on the character of a thing. And it's also embedded in our culture's worship of productivity, efficiency, performance. So here's a crazy graph that I want to show you. I was in a class for a week for seminary and intensive, which is great. Is it up? You see it? Okay. This is a comparison of 2024 and 2025 of how people primarily used ChatGPT. 2024, generate ideas, therapy and companionship already. Number 2, specific search, edit text. 2025, therapy and companionship is number 1. And then 2 new things popped up this year. Organizing your life, and 3rd, finding purpose. And then all the other stuff that is enhancing learning, whatever. And in our class, one of the things that she said is that we've commodified and alienated each other so much, and alienated ourselves so much to the point that it makes us feel as though a non-human companion isn't that much different. And this stuff can bleed into our lives as missionaries. We're drawn to constantly assessing and transactionalizing the people around us by wondering, is this person worth my time? Are they the most, do they have the most opportunity to become a disciple maker? That's like the campus world. That's all we think about. If you go to these campus conferences, it's just like, pick the most influential ones and pick the best ones and then multiply. It's dangerous because we are commodifying, even in our ministries, the people that we're serving. Is this person someone I should invest in, or is this person simply a distraction? And in a multitude of ways, the world is forming us to view humans as nothing more than an object and a machine of production instead of sacred beings made in the image of God. And so prayer counterforms us by shaping us to be led by compassion. It reminds us of what it feels like to be compassionate. Mark 6, when Jesus landed and saw, context. So he sends out the disciples. They do all this stuff. They come back. They're like, Jesus, we did all these things. And he's like, okay, you haven't eaten, you haven't rested. Go to another place to spend some time by yourselves. But the problem is, here's a bunch of people that actually saw them and followed them. And so they come, and Jesus, although he has every right to rest, every right to self-preservation, every right to send them away, he doesn't. Not because he's just being obedient to the Father. Not because he feels an obligation, but because his heart is moved with compassion. And the world needs a church that is motivated by the compassion in its heart for the people it serves. One of the most beautiful things about the underground that I first fell in love with is that it was not primarily led by programs or events or organizational systems, definitely not entertainment, none of that. I mean, Brian was freaking making us repent. Every time in the car we go back home, it was repent. That's how I felt. So it's not like we go to have fun. But it was led, I'm not saying that's bad, by the way. I liked it. But it was led by a group of people who shed tears for the brokenhearted, who shed tears for the poor, who shed tears for the lost, people who, you guys were people who I believed would shed tears for me. And I don't really feel like I had that. If your heart has grown numb and apathetic, then return to the place of prayer. If ministry has become a job, return to the place of prayer. Because as we experience the love and compassion that God has for us in our brokenness, we are shaped into a people that can have that same compassion for others in their brokenness. And because as we draw near to God and spend time with him, he begins to give us his heart. And isn't that what we want? Isn't that the danger that actually we always need to pay attention to, that we are constantly doing ministry, like John said, to validate ourselves? Is it for me? Is it for me to become a better leader or be influential or be liked or be affirmed? Or is it because I love Jesus and I know he loves me? And so I'm compelled by that love to go and love others. It's a huge difference. And I think we are in more danger of it than you think. I think we're all always in more danger of it than you think. The third last pair is that our world shapes us to want and be more. Genesis 2, we don't have to put it up, creates Adam. And Adam is by himself, and God says, this ain't good. But it's a perfect world, and he's perfectly created. Do you get that? So it's everything God creates before the fall is actually, it's good. It's actually good. And the way that he solves Adam's problem of not being good or these limits or lacks that he has by being himself is not to make him not feel those lacks or not feel those wants or not feel those limits, but he makes another person with the same limits. And really, this means that it's because of our limits that the need for relationship was born. And every single time we try to be more than who we are, overextend ourselves, not know how to say no, and we're just trying to do more and more. We are actually dehumanizing ourselves and putting these walls between us and others and us and God, because limits is what it creates our need for one another. And so in this situation, the serpent comes and the serpent deceives Adam and Eve, saying, did God really say that you must not eat from the tree in the garden? Did God really put these limits on you? And really his temptation plants into us a malformed desire to want and be more than the limits God, in his love, has given us for a purpose. People keep talking about telling me actually, this is good. For those of you who don't know, Sherry's pregnant. And we didn't make any like public things. So Sherry's pregnant. She's getting there. You can see later. But I remember when there was like multiple people keep telling me that parenting is obviously is difficult, but women keep coming up to me and saying, hey, just so you know, Sherry is at some point going to feel like she's not doing enough. She's not a good of a mom enough. That she is failing. That she needs to be more and more and more. And your job, Sam, is to be there to tell her you're enough. And actually ask me for help. I will be there with you. And I know you lack in these ways or limited in these ways, but I'm going to be there for you. And that's relationships, right? That's love. That's friendship. Guys, don't try to take away your limits. Don't try to be more than how God has made you. And that's a journey, by the way, figuring out the details and the quirkiness of you and the specificities of who you are, and to somehow, at times you're like trying to be more and you want to grow in these ways, and it's a good desire, but maybe God didn't give that to you. I mean, this is what we talk about, right? Like gifts and APEST and stuff. Like part of who we are is to actually be secure in God's love enough to say, I don't need to be good at everything. And to actually, like, one of the things, I'm going on a tangent, but one of the things that I read was that this person, this psychologist, doctor, is talking about how in our context, kids, the way we raise our kids, so none of you, but the world raises our kids, is by constantly telling them to be good, you're great, you're awesome, and if they are not good at something, you just go find something else, and you just fill up their calendar for all the things. To the point where now you just have to like continue doing all these things and until you find something that they're successful at. And that kind of puts into their minds and their hearts that, oh, you know what? I'm only enough when I can be good at something. And is that what it means to be human? I don't think so at all. My experience I've been leading worship for quite a while, so not even just before the underground. High school, my home church, it was what I thought I was going to do. I went to like an internship in New York, and, you know, I was like, I'm going to write songs, and the dude was like texting Jeremy Riddle, and I'm like, oh my God, he's texting Jeremy Riddle. Foolish. But you know, I really thought that was what I was meant to do. And honestly, a lot of things happened in that time. As I was early in the development of my leadership and my just trying to figure out who I am, discipleship. I actually experienced a lot of pain in the sense that I felt like my voice was not being heard. Felt like it was being shot down and overlooked. Felt like my words, my ideas, my voice, my gifts, all of those things were not valuable. And actually, if you know me pretty well, you know that I struggle with that. And without fully recovering, I started leading worship for the underground. And what happened was, I was at the underground in the past, and the worship changed my life. Then a lot of stuff happened, and then now I'm like, oh, I need to lead worship on my own with a guitar, with people I don't even know. And it did this thing where it just like broke my mind. I was so insecure. And actually, the first 2 to 3 years of leading worship for you guys, and I hope you didn't notice, I dreaded it. I had to be like, I think I went to Lucas and told me one time, and I was just like, I don't want to do this. I cannot do this. And someone said it last week too, but Lucas was like, you should probably do it. But it was the situation where I was so like, my desire to be more and want more, my desire to be enough, it kind of ruled my mind. And I constantly was trying to, not even just for worship, but in just who I am, I'm reading all these books. I don't like reading books. I just read books because I'm insecure that I'm not going to be enough intellectually. I read a bunch of stuff. I'm talking to a bunch of stuff. So for those of you who know Jason Thompson, I've not met him once, but I got on a Zoom call with him. And I was like, so how do I lead worship to this community? I'm talking to Josh Hopp, calling him up. Well, how do I do this? Just constantly trying to do more, be more, fill myself up more so that I can be enough for you. Few people have come up to me now in the past maybe year and a half, and they're like, man, something's different about your worship. Something's changed. You see, it feels like you're breaking through something. And I'm like, you wouldn't even know. See, what happened was at a certain point, at kind of like the lowest point, I just felt like, man, I need to relearn what it means to be with Jesus. Not constantly do for Jesus, but be with him. Receive his love for me again. And as I was kind of contemplating these things alone in the quiet, and now I'm thinking about my life and wrestling with hard things, what occurred to me was that whenever I felt the most confident in my leadership and most confident in my voice was when I was praying the same prayer again and again, which is I go in a room, I sit down, turn off the lights, and I just help constantly, again and again and again. Help, help, help. Instead of trying to be and do more so that I could achieve things through my own strength, I gave up and entered into the presence of God. And as I allowed myself to sit at the feet of the King, I let go of being more, because there's only one person that should be more, and that's him. And I should be less. And as I started, my mind descending into my heart, or the darkness of my heart ascending into my mind, I came to a place where Jesus met me with compassion and with love. And so whenever you see me just going for it up here, especially like when I worship by myself without a band, really how I'm walking into this space is I'm praying, help. Jesus, help. I am not enough. I don't want to be enough. I don't need to be enough. I just need your help. I need you to fill that space. And in our ministries, I hope to God that you are not trying to be enough. Because that is the biggest danger for missionaries. Well, maybe not biggest, but one of the biggest. That you think you're enough without God. That you succeed without the Holy Spirit. And so we go to that place of prayer. 2 Corinthians says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness, and therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weakness, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Limitations and dependence are not a deficiency. It is the prerequisite for making space for the power of God. And so we must become once again a people of prayer, not simply for the sake of ourselves and our lives, but for the ones that we serve. We want them to encounter not our measly power, but God's ultimate power. And so we must, in the place of prayer, find the courage to be weak. So when I think about the underground, at least for me, the primary descriptor of who we are for me is not actually a missionary people. For me, it's a praying people. In my mind, anything that has come from the underground was born and shaped, anything good that has come from the underground was born and shaped first by our desperate attempt to be where Jesus is and go where Jesus is going. And that's prayer. Everything we do, to me, is a product of our leaning into his still small voice. And we have prayer rooms. We practice intercession and engage in listening prayer and do all these things, but really, even if he didn't answer us, even if he didn't speak anything or say anything, we still do it because we simply want to be with him. We simply love him. Everything else is just a byproduct of that. And it may be more important than ever to hold on to our roots as a praying people today. If you struggle with silence with God, something that's really helpful for me most recently because we're going to practice this soon. Emily, if you can actually come up. One of the things that I learned recently is that silence, number one, is the first and primary language of God. So we come to our little prayer rooms and our little prayer stations, and we're like, God, talk to me, bro. What are you doing, man? I'm sitting here, aren't I? Why aren't you saying anything? As if he's a genie that's supposed to respond to every call, every ask. But number two, silence, because of this, silence is actually the thing that helps us remember who is God and who is not. It wouldn't be good for us if he answered us all the time. And to be honest, guys, I'm about to have she's about to have this baby. And early on, I'm like, I really don't want a daughter. Because I have girl students, and I'm like, you guys are stressing me out. You're stressing me out. It's just like, what? I can't do that. I'm too much of a control freak. I'm so worried. The world is not a great place. I keep making this joke that when the baby comes, I'm going to train her to be an assassin. Not to kill anybody, but just to have the ability to, so that she can defend herself if needed, right? We're having a daughter. Like maybe a little bit more later on in the pregnancy, I started getting really excited because they're great. These girls are great. It's a joy to be around them. But there is this constant thing of me wanting to control God in that space. Control God in my future parenting. Control God in my relationships. To control God in my ministry. But guys, I can't stress this enough. We have to release control in our lives. We are slaves to control. When we had our miscarriage, the first thing we said when we got home was, she wasn't ours to begin with. Or he wasn't ours to begin with. And this baby, we're trying to do the same thing. She's not mine to begin with. Your ministry is not yours to begin with. And so we need to go into that place of prayer, to relinquish control and trust in him, and to be reminded that he's better than we are, more enough than we could ever be, that actually it's more fun to depend on him so that he can meet our needs and see crazy things happen. And so I want us to practice. I want us to practice.